And the Russians keep making this mistake. It's almost like Napoleon, don't interrupt your enemy while he makes mistakes, of just leaving their vital ammunition supplies out in the open, unprotected. So they're getting blown up in Ukraine and now in, occupied areas.
Let's talk about Ukraine now, because the country, its leadership has suggested it used special forces to carry out an attack today on an ammunition depot in Russian occupied Crimea. Video online showed smoke from several locations at the Russian base near the town of Dzyankoy. Earlier, Russia's defense ministry acknowledged that saboteurs were behind the explosions, and the Russian-installed authority in Crimea has declared an emergency in the north of the peninsula. It comes exactly a week after a Russian airbase in Crimea was hit in what appeared to be a similar attack. Well, let's talk to Major John Spencer, who is Chair of Urban Warfare Studies with the Madsen Policy Forum and author of Connected Soldiers. Major, good evening.
Good evening.
So let's think about this. So a successful attack on Russian warplanes last week and a special forces operation today. What do you read into this?
Well, I read into it that they're sending a strong signal to Russia. I mean, this isn't Russia, right? This is Crimea. This is Russian occupied Ukraine. But to send Russia a message that they can hit that deep into Russian occupied areas, I mean, this is hundreds of kilometers from the front line, what people would think is the front line. But to me, it sends a bunch of signals about the Battle of Kherson about to happen. It's a message that Russia can't hide from their citizens, as you see massive amounts of Russians who are, I guess, on vacation in Crimea, clogging up the roads on trying to get over the Kerch Bridge. It's a great day for Ukraine that these magic explosions that they of course don't want to take credit for, but are happening.
Yeah, and what I found intriguing was Crimea has been in Russian control for the past 8 years. They're deeply embedded there. They're in what would appear to be total control. So how are the Ukrainians managing to do this?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple ways it could potentially be done. I don't disagree with the possibility, although Ukraine again hasn't said they've done any of this, because why would you tell your enemy how you're doing it? That you could insert, this is old school special operations, right? Deep inserted forces to conduct reconnaissance and strike critical nodes. And the Russians keep making this mistake. It's almost like Napoleon, don't interrupt your enemy while he makes mistakes, of just leaving their vital ammunition supplies out in the open, unprotected. So they're getting blown up in Ukraine and now in, occupied areas.
And the UK Ministry of Defence has said that these blasts have, and I quote, significantly degraded the aviation capability of the Russian Navy's Black Sea Fleet. So what might this mean in practice?
So it means the Black Sea Fleet is more vulnerable without these Navy aircrafts, right? So up to 9, 10 naval aircrafts, millions and millions of dollars that the Russians can't replace. But their fleet, the actual ships, especially in the Black Sea Fleet, are now more vulnerable without those. And Russia is weaker because of that one really important strike. But the same thing with the ammunition depot. Russian gets weaker every day of this war.
And I see that some Ukrainian spokesmen have been talking about 20,000 Russian troops being abandoned, being cut off, potentially surrounded, because Putin and his top generals have changed strategy, and they almost appear to be sacrificing those troops. What do you know about this?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been seeing for weeks that the Ukrainians have smartly been approaching liberating Kherson very smartly by cutting off Russian forces. If they can cut off all hope of resupply, and it looks like Russia has allowed that to happen so far, although they did reposition some forces to the south. But if the troops in that Kherson Oblast can be cut off, no hope of resupply, they may give up. They don't have a great cause they're fighting for. So this is what Ukraine has been doing, like taking out all the bridges that we've seen, taking out the road intersections and the ammunition supplies. I mean, it could be a major win and really the retaking of the initiative. It would be the first, occupied area that Ukraine has offensively taken back.
And how imminent would you say the real battle for Kherson is? And for people who don't know, Kherson is just to the north of the Crimean Peninsula, isn't it? To the south of the country.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the only forces west of the Dnieper River. When could it happen? I think it'll happen, of course, before winter. So there is a drive for the Ukrainians to do it. So I'm thinking weeks, not months, but you don't want to draw the line in the sand because Ukraine is at a disadvantage. Those are Ukrainian citizens inside that city, and they don't want to just shell it and hurt civilians or their infrastructure.
All right. Thank you very much for your insight tonight, Major John Spencer, Chair of Urban Warfare Studies with the Madsen Policy Forum, talking to us live.